We are live.
Yay!
We're live. Wonderful. Good evening, everybody, on this kind of damp Monday evening, at least where I am. I hope it's not cold and wet everywhere, but we're really excited tonight to have Kristy, Woodson, Harvey joining us to talk about the wedding veil. I'm Brenda Gardner, your host in South Carolina, and I'm joined by my co-host Lisa in Atlanta. And of course, Kristy, Woodson, Harvey.
Yay. Joining you from a hotel room in Vero Beach, Florida on book tour.
We will take it. We will take it because Kristy is on a busy tour, and we are so excited about talking about the wedding veil tonight. But first, I'm going to give you a little introduction, Kristy, and then we'll jump right into it. For those who aren't familiar with Kristy, she's the New York Times, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly best-selling author of 9 novels, including Under the Southern Sky, Peachtree Bluff series, and the brand new Wedding Veil. Kristy is the winner of the Judy Bramlett Patterson Award for Excellence in Creative Writing, a finalist for the Southern Book Prize, and her work has been optioned for film and has received numerous accolades. She blogs with her mom, Beth Woodson, on Design Chic about how creating a beautiful home can be a catalyst for a beautiful life. Of course, we know her best as one of the Fab Four, a founder and co-host of our Friends in Fiction Favorite Evening, podcaster and tourer extraordinaire. Welcome, Kristy.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to see both of you. And you know, this is always one of the best parts of a book coming out and just getting to come on and talk to you guys. It feels like we've been doing this forever, but it's only been a couple of years, guys.
That's right. It does seem like it's completely natural and we've been doing it forever. It's just crazy.
It's crazy.
I'm so excited that I feel like we miss you. Like we haven't seen you for book club. For a while, since Christmas in Peachtree Bluff, which isn't that long ago, but I don't know. We're so excited to see you.
I'm so excited to see y'all. And I just saw Lisa in real life, obviously, a couple weeks ago. So that was exciting.
We had so much fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. It was so fun.
Well, speaking of seeing Lisa, I was going to say, speaking of seeing Lisa on tour, you were doing a kind of a massive Southern tour. And could you tell us a little bit about the tour and what your experience has been like with the Wedding Veil so far?
Oh my gosh, it has been amazing. I keep saying, I think this is the best tour I've ever been on, which is really kind of awesome because I always really love being on tour. But yeah, like you mentioned, this has really, I'm sorry, I'm in this this chair is like really loud. So I'm sorry if you can hear it like every time I move, but yeah, so the past couple of book tours, obviously we had to cancel a bunch of events because of COVID. And so for this one, I was like, let's just plan a big Southeast tour and we'll hope for the best. And then, you know, I won't have a ton of flights or anything to change if, you know, things change and COVID's bad again. And of course it has been great. The world has been, it's felt very normal on this tour. Now, you know, I don't know what's coming down the pike, but it has been very normal. It's just been so fun to see people and like fun crowds like they used to be. And it's just really very much felt like, you know, the before times. So it's been really, really great. And I've just been all over the place. I've done a lot, like more North Carolina events than I've ever done before, just because this is a North Carolina book. You know, Biltmore is in North Carolina. It is sort of a North Carolina centric story. So that's been really fun. And it's just been great to see people again and to see so many like Friends in Fiction book club members and just Friends in Fiction members in general. And it's, and then to, you know, recruit new ones. And the best thing to me is when I'll be somewhere and I'll be like, okay, who's in Friends in Fiction? And, you know, inevitably they're like, at least a few people from Friends in Fiction, but then there'll be some people, you know, that aren't from Friends in Fiction. And the best thing is like, I always talk about Friends in Fiction in my talks, but then for like people after, like I'll hear people be like, oh, no, you have to watch on Wednesday nights. And like, these are who some of the guests have been. And it just makes me so excited to see like other Friends in Fiction people, like, you know, recruiting like new members, like, no, like you've got to join. And I love that. It's just such a great community and it is so exciting to get to see everybody.
So awesome. Brenda and I first, before we dive in, we want to thank you for always being such a big support of the book club. You, not only in this book did you acknowledge me and Brenda in the acknowledgments as our names and as peanut butter and jelly. That's the first time we ever had a PB&J shout out in a book. So that in the acknowledgement, that was
yay,
awesome.
history being made.
History. But even more important than that, on page 60, you gave the Friends in Fiction Book Club a shout out that just warmed our heart. I read it over and over. I screenshotted it. I couldn't believe it. So we want to thank you for that, but also what made you put that in the book?
I remember just thinking, I was so excited when I found a way to work it in, and it was very natural. Like in that chapter, they were, sitting down, they were about to go to bed. She was picking up her book and reading it. And I was like, she can be reading her book for the Friends in Fiction Book Club. This is so fantastic. And so I was so excited. And I just thought it would be a fun nod to the group. And I knew a lot of F and Fers out there would get it. And then I thought, well, maybe there'll be people out there that think the Friends in Fiction Book Club, what is that? And maybe they'll go look it up. So, who knows?
Well, some people say when they join the book club, where they heard about it, and we've seen some, acknowledgments of the book and different things. So yeah, people read that stuff.
Good, I'm so excited. That's awesome.
So page 160, it's marked in my book, but it's on page 160 for those that don't know exactly where it is.
And we debated whether that was a spoiler, and we decided that doesn't have anything to do really with the plot. So we're going to go ahead and spoil it, because my eyes nearly bugged out when I got to it.
Yeah.
So it achieved its desired effect, Kristy.
Okay, good. I'm so glad to hear that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I love it. And see, I should have told y'all it was in there though, because I was not testing you to see if you actually read the book. I promise. It was not a test. It really was
That never even occurred to me.
If anything, it'd be testing me. Last minute Lisa.
Last minute
Lisa. Yes, this is a standing joke, Kristy. I am the read it way too earlier, and she's the read it at the last minute.
Well, that's good, because I feel like sometimes I feel very prepared when I've read early, but then also sometimes I forget about what the book was about.
Well, I think having us do one of each works out pretty well.
It's a nice balance, because someone's prepared, and then someone can fill in the last minute details. See, that's why y'all are the perfect pair. I mean, it's just
peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, the universe works in amazing ways. You just never know.
Oh my goodness. Well, let's get started on the book. This is just an amazing first historical fiction novel. First of all, I just have to say that. And we are going to save spoilers for everybody who's watching until tonight at 7:15, because we kind of have changed up the spoiler rule, because most everybody wanted to get right into discussing the details of the book. So spoilers after 7:15. So we had a lot of questions in advance from book club members about, how the balance between historical fiction, facts, and fiction occurred. And one of the things that I was hoping you would cover, you do it in the author's notes, but I just think it's a fascinating story. Tell us how your idea started out for the wedding veil with the veil, and then you kind of backed into the whole rest of the wonderful story.
Oh, well, thank you. So my husband's family has this really beautiful wedding veil that has been, I'm couldn't think of the word wedding veil. That's a good sign. That's what the book is called. Spoiler. They have a really beautiful, I was thinking of the word heirloom. That's what I just couldn't come up with. Heirloom family wedding veil that has been passed down through, generations of his family. And so when we got engaged, my sister-in-law passed it along to me and said, no pressure, but if you want to wear it, that'd be great. You're more than welcome to. And it just was really special, because I felt like it was something from his family that, on that day. And then when my cousin got married, I was her matron of honor, and I sort of passed it along to her, and she wanted to wear it in her wedding. And so I was actually the person that got to put her veil on her head, and it was right before she was walking down the aisle. And I just remember thinking and like even saying to her, how cool it was that this veil connected us to all these different women. And we were both like, that's a book, that's definitely a book that, that's kind of how ideas come to me. I don't normally have like a story. It's just like a little nugget of an idea. And I just have to trust and hope that when I sit down, the story is going to come to me. And so I kind of had this, like, I get these sort of like pictures in my head which is bizarre, but I don't even know how to explain it in a different way than that. But it's like a picture in my head of what the story looks like, but it's like this whole book. And I just had this picture in my head of how there were going to be these 3 protagonists. And then there were going to be these 5 like little vignettes of these other women who had worn this veil. And so I told the idea to my agent, and she was like, I love that. But you should write about a real historical wedding veil. And just as a little like side note, the reason that she said that is there is a larger historical fiction project that I know I want to write one day, and that I've, told her about and said, this is a woman that I really want to write about, but I want it to be like, not a biography because it'll be fiction, but a big work of her life, so this is something that I don't want to do right now. I want to do it later when I feel like I have more time. And so she knew that historical fiction was something I was interested in. And it's also one of my favorite genres to read. And she said, well, what if you did a historical contemporary novel and write about a real historical wedding veil? And I really wasn't super into the idea because I just didn't think if I was going to write something historical, I didn't want it to feel forced. Like, I didn't want it to be something that I was out searching for. I wanted it to be something that like wouldn't let me go, kind of like this other story. And so a few months earlier, or probably like a year and a half earlier, we had been at Biltmore, and I was just so interested in Edith Vanderbilt and her life and her story and how she saved Biltmore, and just all these things about her. And she was someone that I really could see myself writing about one day, but I never really imagined that I would necessarily. And so when she mentioned that, I Googled Edith Vanderbilt's wedding veil, and the story popped up about, her beautiful heirloom family veil and all the women who had worn it, and then how it had been lost and disappeared. And I was like, that's my book, that's my story. And so I was able to sort of put together this story about, not only Edith's real wedding veil and her life story, and Cornelia, her daughter's life story, but also, this contemporary grandmother and granddaughter. And so I sort of got this mix of that contemporary story that I was wanting, plus, these women that I was really, really interested in. So it ended up being the perfect fit, but, you just never know. It was one of those ones that came to me just like little by little, and wasn't necessarily something that I ever planned on writing, but I'm really glad I did. So it was fun.
Oh, you're mute.
Certainly sounds like it was meant to be. Sorry, I was on mute.
That was
that gave me chills just hearing about it. I can only imagine how surprised you were when you found that.
Yeah, it was really exciting. It's sometimes you have those moments, and it really is just, it's exciting when I feel like a story finds me. And I've felt like that so many times. And oh my gosh, you guys, I have to tell y'all this. And maybe some people saw it on my Instagram, but y'all, this was nuts. I did an event at Biltmore on Wednesday night. Well, the first nuts thing about it was that, you don't do, like, I did an event it was on Biltmore property, but it wasn't at the house. And it was a private event for like a private company. So I haven't like shared pictures or anything because I just felt kind of weird about it. But so they invited me to come speak about the book and, whatever. And so I did the event. And then after, Biltmore is closed and everything's closed, but we were on the property. So we were like in the gates, and I was like, everybody was leaving. And I was like, I'm just going to go see if I can take a picture of the house. And like, I went up there and I was like completely alone, like, and got to like be on the lawn and like take pictures completely alone. So that was crazy. But the even more crazy thing was that we were staying at the Grove Park Inn. And if you've ever been to the Grove Park Inn, you know that like every famous person that's ever stayed there has their picture on the wall. And the Grove Park is huge. Like, I don't know how many rooms it has, but it's tremendous. And like, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people's pictures on the wall, if not thousands, like just gobs of them. And so I wasn't even really paying attention. I went to my room, did whatever. And I got ready for the night, and I walked outside, and the picture beside my room was Edith Vanderbilt. And I was like, oh my gosh, But the organizer of this event is like so great that I was like, she totally did this on purpose. So I get to the event and I was like, I can't believe what room you put me in. And she was like, I don't even know what room you're in. Like I have, 200 people here. Everybody's just all over the place. And I was like, I'm in the room beside Edith Vanderbilt's picture. And she was like, oh my gosh, like that's so crazy. But there were all these like just little tiny things that would happen like throughout the course of writing this book that I would feel like, okay, like I'm on the right track. I'm supposed to be doing this. But when that happened, I like about fell out. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Wow. Now that gave me goosebumps.
I know, it was really crazy. I could not get over it. I really couldn't.
That's meant to be.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of comments in the chat. Okay. Everyone is saying they love the historical fiction and they hope to see more historical fiction. Lots of comments like that. But one in particular, Susan Seligman says, Kristy, you definitely found your footing with this historical fiction novel. I do hope you continue writing in this genre.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, well, I will tell y'all that my 2024 novel does have a historical storyline. It's not real people. Well, that's not true. It's actually kind of based on real people in my family, but it's not like real famous people. So I'm not, doing hordes of research and like recreating someone's life, but it is a historical place, historical time period. So I'm excited about that one.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. We'll have to dig more into that later and get some scoop.
Yeah. Sounds like some investigation.
Go ahead, Brenda. Sorry, there's a delay.
Go
ahead. Kate Simmons Westbury says, Kristy, you must really enjoy writing the architectural descriptions in your books, given your blog. If you weren't an author and successful blogger, would you have wanted to be an architect?
Oh, that's a good question. But no, because let me tell you why. I could totally see myself. No, because and this is so bizarre. So I love decorating and I love design and all of that. And I can, well, this isn't like I don't know. I don't mean it this in like I can blah, blah, blah. I don't mean it like I'm so good at it. I don't mean it like that, but I do think I can go into a space and like, I can leave and like go buy things that fit the proportions. Like I proportionally, when I've been in a room, like I'm fine. If I'm looking at it on a piece of paper, no idea. Cannot do it. Like, and so I always, like if we're doing something, we've just had opportunities to do some things where we, had architectural drawings or something. And I'll just have to look at Will and be like, I'm just trusting you. Cause this means nothing to me. Like, I cannot visualize it until I am standing inside of it. So I think I would have been a bad architect. But that said, I think it's like one of the most interesting professions. One of my best friends is an architect, and my husband's dad and granddad were architects. And I think if he wasn't a dentist, he would definitely have been an architect because he's really good at it. And he has all that good, like spatial reasoning. And our son has it too. I just don't have it. It's sad. No talent.
You have lots of talent, my friend.
Absolutely. But I get you because I do a lot of things that, fairly well, but I am spatially challenged trying to like read the, inside of a floor plan or something. So I'm with you there.
No.
Yeah. I'm so bad. I'm just like, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, but which way is that? It's bad. It's just really bad.
Yeah. I couldn't do that either.
I'm bad at reading maps too. So thank the Lord for GPSs. If I had been born,
my God,
15 years earlier, my adult life would have looked very different.
I don't know how we ever got around without GPS. I am literally the absolute worst when it comes to like maps. Like Brenda's the map person.
Thank goodness.
I'm nodding my head. Lisa is the worst.
Brenda's like, oh, let's look at the map. I'm like, I can't read a map, girl. What you want me to do?
I mean, Mary Kay, I'm not talking about her behind her back because I think she would tell you this. She's on here too, but she and I are both really directionally challenged. And like recently, we were somewhere and it was like the two of us in the car together, and we were on the phone with her husband, and he was like, "This is the worst idea. Who would have put the two of you in a car together? You will never get there." because we're both just like really challenged. But she was talking about, you know, when she used to go on book tour and like sometimes you're by yourself. And she's like, I would be pulling over on the side of the road, looking at the map. And she's like, you know, I can't, I'm looking at the map, like, where am I going? I mean, I would never get anywhere. I don't know what I would have done without GPS.
Yeah,
I remember my first job out of college, and GPS technology was like very new, like in cars. So, you know, it was like when you would still buy the little Garmin or whatever, but it was even like sort of right before that became a thing. And I remember calling my husband one time. I was in Raleigh and I was on the belt line, and there's like the inner and the outer, and like one goes this way and one goes this way. And I'm like crying on the phone. I'm like, I don't know where I am. And he's going, they're concentric circles. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I got home.
He was trying.
He was trying. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I mean, and I do, like, I know what concentric circles are, but like, I don't know what that means. And so, and I remember getting home and like 2 days later, he was like, I took the plunge. I got you a Garmin because I figured that it would pay for itself in the gas that you waste just driving around, not knowing where you are in like just a couple of months. And it's life-changing.
Oh, that's a great story though. But knowing that they're concentric circles and how to get out of the traffic are two different things, I might say.
Right.
I have no idea what you are talking about. I don't know what any of that is.
That's too funny.
Well, I finally memorized
Kristy, we can go ahead.
No, y'all go ahead. Sorry. I think I have a little bit of a delay. I don't think my internet's like the best.
Yeah, I'm not sure where it's coming from. I'm feeling the delay too, so I apologize if I'm jumping in. But we had several questions about kind of the background about the wedding veil that I think you answered earlier. But Lori Alcon Brown wants to know, she wants to know whether you think an heirloom like the wedding veil that you have to live up to is a blessing or not. And she says she had never thought of an heirloom of the downside of keeping up a tradition.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the most fun things for me to get to explore in this story. And I knew right away, like even when I had the idea for the contemporary novel and it wasn't going to have anything to do with the Vanderbilts, I knew the opening of that story was going to be, you know, a woman who's about to walk down the aisle and her grandmother's putting that veil on her head. And she knows she's going to be the one to ruin the, you know, name of the family wedding veil. And I do think you see, you know, a couple of different times in this story where the veil is kind of more of a curse than a blessing. And it's a symbol, you know, the veil is not the thing that makes them feel this way, but it's a symbol of what they have to let go of in order to be able to move forward. And I think it does become a symbol in the story, but also in our lives. I think this can happen too, to Laurie's point, you know, you have something that you do feel like you need to live up to, and it's less about the thing itself and more about the expectations that are placed on you by someone outside of yourself. And so, yeah, it can definitely be a double-edged sword for sure. Good question, Laurie. I like that.
Yeah, I thought that one was great. And I'm going to ask one more and then check with Lisa to see if there's anything coming in, questions from the chat. I'm curious that one of the striking things about this book to me was the relationship between Julia and Babs, her grandmother, and just how much of a bond they had and how they expressed themselves in letters. And I wanted to ask you if that was fiction or if you had that kind of relationship with your grandmother.
Yeah, so I've always had a really close relationship with my grandmother that probably some of you have heard. She passed away right before this book came out, like just a few days before it came out, but not letters necessarily, but I'm just such a big fan of letters. And I actually early on, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's not a big spoiler, but actually
spoiler alert. We're in our spoiler time.
Oh, we're in our spoiler zone. Okay. So I was kind of like, I thought it would be fun, like early on to, you know, have her be able to come back and say, like, I always wanted someone to write me love letters. And then I realized, you know, that I always had someone writing me love letters. And so that was kind of where that came from. But the other thing, and I didn't lean on this too much, but I did make up the letters between Cornelia and Jack Cecil. But I did not make up the letter between Edith and her grandmother. And that was real. And she told her, you know, in this letter to her, you know, house united cannot fall. And I just loved that. And I actually found it later on in my research. Like this was probably like the third or fourth draft of this book. Like, I think it was like right before I turned it in for good and like never saw it again, that I found that letter. And I was like, that's like a symbol for this entire story, that once, as these people start to split, especially in Edith and Cornelia's case, like you can see, like once they start to disagree about the future of the house or the future in general, and their house kind of starts to split, like that's when everything sort of starts to fall apart. And so I knew I had to use that. And then I thought that was kind of a nice parallel that, we did have like this letter from Edith's grandmother in the past, and then we could see, the letters between Babs and Julia right now. But I love writing letters, and I don't do it. I don't do it enough in my real life, but I love writing them in books.
No, that's one thing that's so important. And I can't imagine what research is going to be in the future when there aren't any of those letters to pull from to understand, people's personalities and such. It's all going to be electronic.
I think about
OMG and LOL and TTYL,
I know. I think about that all the time. No, I mean, in like the book that I was talking about earlier that I really want to write, like I have like 850 of this woman's letters. I mean, I don't have to guess about anything in her life. I know of course there are things that you're not going to write in a letter, but like that is just invaluable. Like to be able to really piece someone's life together through their letters. And yeah, you're right. We will not have that. I mean, we really won't. It's kind of sad.
It is kind of sad, but they're so enriching to the story. I just hate to think that they will be lost, that art is lost. Lisa, I think you had something you wanted to ask, right?
Yeah, I have two questions. First, I just want to say there is a lot of love in the chat right now for Babs. She has quite a few favorite characters. She was my favorite character in the book as well. I loved how spunky she was. I loved how she kept it real. I loved her so much.
Thank you.
And my next question is related to her. I have two questions, but the first one it's from Maria Lou, who I can say wins the award for the book club question preparation. She had about 6 questions. I'm only going to be able to ask 2. But so the first one is, do you believe in the type of great love that Miles and Babs had? They were at camp counselors for only one summer for 3 months, and then 60 years later they meet again at Summer Acres, and their feelings are still the same and they have a connection. Do you know anyone with this great love connection?
Oh, that's really sweet. So first of all, I have to say that I think Maria not only wins the question asker award, I also think she wins the like farthest traveled to a Wedding Veil event award. Yes. Because she came to see me in Florida and she lives in New York. So Maria, thank you.
That's awesome.
That was awesome. I mean, I didn't like base that story on anyone. There wasn't someone that I was like, oh, I know that they met and then they like fell back in love 60 years later. But do I believe in that? Yes. Like, I think that for whatever reason it is, I don't think it's necessarily just great love. Like, I think I think it's always great love, but I don't think it has to be romantic. I think it can be friends. I think there are some people in the world on the planet that for whatever reason, they have a connection that just exists, like where they feel like they've known each other forever. And I don't think it has to be like a romantic love, but I mean, I think there are people, like very few, but I think there are people that I've met like as friends that I've just felt like, oh, wow, we're like, I've known this person forever and ever and ever, or you just fall into something so easily. So I do very much believe in that connection. And I know people who, have been together at earlier points in their lives and time has passed and, they've moved forward in their lives and decades have passed and then they'll meet up again and it's like nothing's changed and they end up getting married or, I definitely do know people who have done that. And I think I'm so fascinated by that. Like I kind of write about it.
I know.
I'm really fascinated by it. Like, I just think that's so insane that like you cannot see someone for, 30 years and it's like no time has passed at all. And I guess as I get older, I can start to see that in my own life. Like I can, be with friends that I haven't seen in a while, but we grew up together, and, maybe we haven't seen each other in a few years, but it just doesn't matter. It's like we saw each other yesterday. And so I think as I get older, I start to see more and more like how that kind of connection can sort of exist between people. So, but y'all know, I love a good love story. So
yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Okay, the next question, I absolutely love this question. I wondered the same thing. So she says on page 249, the marble bench beneath Davy Poplar, UNC, centuries old tree. It was said if you kissed, you would stay together forever. Is there such a bench? And have you or anyone you know tested it?
So there is such a bench. That is a legend. I think many, 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 many people have tested it. I have not. So there you go. And that's actually really interesting because I actually thought about this while I was writing it, because I thought about how many people I dated at Chapel Hill that weren't Will, my husband. And I'm like, there's such a good chance that I could have kissed someone like on that like really famous special bench. And I mean, my whole life could have been different because you can't fight the Davy Poplar magic.
Right.
I'm kidding. But no, I mean, but yeah, but that is a real bench. It is a real tree, and it is a real legend. So now, is it true?
Wow.
I mean, I guess legends get to be legends for a reason, right? So I'm assuming that there is a reason like that is a legend, but I need to look more into that now.
That's super cool. Well, I have one more quick one, and then I'm going to give it back to Brenda. I know she's got some more questions too. But Carrie Soderman wants to know, have you ever done paddleboard yoga?
Yes. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. So fun fact about me that you guys might not know, I am a certified yoga instructor. Mm-hmm. I've never taught a class, but I did do my 250-hour yoga certification, which was really fun. I have done paddleboard yoga. In fact, I did the place that I first did paddleboard yoga is at, okay, so I'm going to like back up for a minute and tell you all this. So we didn't end up putting dates on the contemporary chapters, but I actually set this story in 2016 for a number of reasons. One, because the fashionable romance exhibit was at Biltmore in 2016. And also because the resort that I kind of like based this on is Bitter End in the British Virgin Islands. And it got like really wiped out in a hurricane. It just came back. It just had their soft opening, but it's been years. So I wanted it to be a time when they actually existed. So if anyone kind of recognized it, they'd be like, oh, that's Bitter End. And it's this really small resort. So probably no one noticed it, but I did paddleboard yoga there for the first time. So yes, I have done it, and I'm better on the ground, just to be honest.
Wow. I was sitting there trying to think, I'm like, how it's hard enough to get on the paddleboard. I'm like, how are you doing like the downward dog pose when they were trying to help?
And
Trav was trying to help her.
Yeah, I really thought like I'm gonna be great at this. Like no problem. Like I can paddleboard, I can do yoga. I am gonna be great. I was terrible. 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 But you do have a little anchor, so it's certainly not stable, but you're not like floating away. So, it's unstable, but you are at least like staying in the same place. You're not like floating down the river or anything, which would be like a whole nother set of problems. But yeah, I'm not good. I thought I was going to be, and I'm very, very bad, very bad, but that's okay. It's still fun. Whatever.
And great that you let it be represented in your novel. That's just awesome.
Better at it than I am. It was like that was my aspirational experience with paddleboard yoga. Put it that way.
Well, hey, at least you did it. I am not sure I could do the same thing. But the point you made about the place being wiped out in the hurricane and it just coming back, it's interesting though, because in this historical fiction novel, you had to research, the huge and the small, for it to be plausible. And I just think that's remarkable, that down to that detail.
Yeah.
Well, that is true. And that's something that like, of course, you know that you're going to be doing that, but I hadn't consciously thought about that. Like I was so worried about, you know, Edith and Cornelia and like piecing their lives back together and Biltmore and like getting the facts about it. Right. But there were things that I would miss and then think about like, wait, would they have had, like, I'll give you an example. You got, I'm trying to think, were y'all with me for this? I think I've told you guys this, but anyway, but we were in Savannah at the book festival. I'm pretty sure I told you guys the story when we were at the book festival, but I'm sitting at the lunch table with just, you know, like some people that are there attending the festival. And we're talking about Biltmore, and she says to me like, oh, it's really cool. You know, I never thought about how they had to lay out all of Edith's clothes in her closet because coat hangers hadn't been invented. And I was like, oh my gosh. And like, I had been in Edith's closet, like doing research and stuff. And that is true. Like some of the stuff was laying down. And I, of course, had thought about that and I had written it. But when I went and wrote the prologue, the veil is hanging. And I don't know that I specifically say it's on a coat hanger. I think it was just hanging. So it could have been on a hook or it could have been whatever.
Yeah.
But in my mind, it was on a coat hanger. And I mean, the book was to print. Like there was nothing to do about it. And I was like, oh my God, coat hangers hadn't been invented. Like I wrote this prologue and coat hangers had not been invented. And I walk outside and like Google when were coat hangers invented. And I mean, it was fortunately several years before the prologue, but I mean, it wasn't like terribly long before. And I thought, well, that is at least plausible because, you know, you're talking about like Edith's mother, but you're talking about the wealthiest people in America, like who would have had access to anything. So I'm like, okay, well, at least it was plausible, but there's little minute details that, and there are things that sometimes like I'm just writing and like I'm in the flow of something. And like, just to give you an example, I wrote something in the description of the huge lions that were on either side of the house, like either side of the front door at Biltmore. And I said something about the limestone lions, and they're not limestone. They're like Italian rose marble or something. I'm probably getting that wrong, but it's right in the book. Whatever it says in the book is the right thing. But I just, you know, I was just writing it and I read it a million times and I knew they weren't made of limestone. But because it just like sounded good or something like in the sentence, and I just like never caught it. And fortunately, someone from Biltmore fact checked the book for me. And she was like, oh, the lions aren't made of limestone. They're made of, you know, Italian rose, whatever they were. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I totally knew that. And I read it 1,000 times, but like all those little details, you know, it's scary, like to think about something that you could get wrong or, and fortunately Biltmore did have like electricity and things that, but you know, I was writing a party in Washington, DC, and I thought, would they have had electricity? So like I needed to go look and be like, you know, so there are bigger things that are obvious, but I guess there's so many things we take for granted, like a coat hanger, that I just couldn't even imagine that there was a time when there wasn't a coat hanger.
Yeah. There's one other thing that we have a couple of questions and some people in the chat discussing was when Cornelia dyed her hair pink.
Yes.
And how could she, like, we know that she really did that.
Yes.
But how could she do that in that time? I was thinking, how do you get a hold of pink
hair dye?
Yeah.
So that's a really good question. And I have to be honest with you. So I really wanted in the book, I thought it would be like a really compelling scene for us to see her dye her hair pink, because I'm the same. I wanted to know, like, what would that process have been like? How would you have dyed your hair? How would you have gotten pink hair dye? And I couldn't find enough information about the process of dyeing your hair pink during that time that I felt like I could like plausibly write a chapter about it. And so I thought it was better to not write it. But I did do enough research. Like that was all the rage in France at that time. Like dyeing your hair pink was like the cool thing. And now Cornelia dyes her hair pink because it's the color of her aura, apparently.
Right.
What I sort of learned, but it was also very fashionable. So there was, I mean, you could just go purchase pink hair dye, just like you can now, which totally blew my mind. Yeah. Like you could just go to like, I mean, there wasn't like a Walgreens. I don't know where you would have bought it, but again, I couldn't find it.
Woolworths.
Yeah. I guess you could go to Woolworths and buy pink hair dye. I don't know, but you could purchase pink hair dye and like dye your hair pink just like you can today, which shocked me.
Wow. That shocked me too when I was reading it.
Mm-hmm.
It did me. And that whole scene where Cornelia is on the train and she's, being someone else and kind of losing her identity. It was just the most poignant part of the book because she's so, I don't know, vulnerable in that scene. And she's just kind of shedding that old skin. It was just, I don't know. I just thought it was really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, it definitely, it was like, I feel like the phoenix rising from the ashes or something, like that moment, that new life moment.
Well, thank you. I struggled with her. I really did. She was a difficult character for me to write. I think she ended up, I don't know. I love them all. So I can't say she was my favorite, but she challenged me the most because I wanted to understand her. And I had a hard time understanding her. Her family had a hard time understanding her. There were people that I talked to that I think still kind of have some scars, from the choices that she made. But I think ultimately, it's hard for us to really know what happened. I think she was very vilified in the press, which I really hated for her. So I wanted to find some ground with her where, she could be a sympathetic character and where I hoped that people could maybe not agree with the choices that she made, but could understand the choices that she made. And then, at the end of the day, those were the choices that she made. So it wasn't
right.
To me, that was a natural ending of the story. And I struggled with that too, because I thought, I don't have to end the story. I can end the story earlier. I can end the story on a really happy note, but I just felt like that wasn't the story. I felt like the story was these two women who have been as close as you could possibly be as a mother and daughter. And then they reach this crossroads where one is trying to save something and one absolutely has to let it go. And to me, that was the poignant part of that story, is to see these two women who have been one person really split on the biggest decision that they're going to have to make. And so, we have to make choices as writers. And to me, that was the most pivotal part of that story. And I do hope that people understand her. I hope that I portrayed her in a way that maybe would make her proud somewhere, that, maybe there was something, but I kept waiting. I felt like I was going to find something in my research or an interview, or there was going to be someone somewhere that knew something, just this little something that was going to. And I will say, it was a family member that told me how just incredibly stifled she felt by the amount of press attention that she got. That was something that I did not find in my research and I could not have predicted. So that changed the story for me a lot. It really did. It informed her entire character. And I do think it explains a lot of the decisions that she made, because I think it's hard to really understand what it would have been like for her to be born into this family where every single thing she ever did her whole life was scrutinized in the newspaper.
Yeah. Well,
and
I think
the numerology was
job.
Thank you.
Sorry, Lisa. I think you did an amazing job too. And she was real. The choices she had to make were real. I was curious about the numerology aspect of it.
Yeah. So that was very real. I mean, and that actually was really helpful for me as the writer of this book, because all of those decisions that she made at the end, and some of them I just covered briefly, but her changing her name to Neelcha and dyeing her hair pink and dancing in the rain and eating grapefruit and all of those things that were documented and that people were talking about. And I'm not, I don't know psychologically where she was. I can't really comment on that, but I felt like the newspapers sort of portrayed her in this very specific way. But when I looked at all of those things that she did, they could all be explained by numerology, which I thought was really interesting, because I knew going in that, she had a real fascination with numerology and that she did base a lot of her life choices on it. And I mean, even to the point that I was able to go in and look at, she was 34 in 1934. And if you were 34 in 1934, that was your year to leave everything in your life behind. And I was like, whoa, I mean, there were just things that it almost I was like, God, this all makes so much sense. And it was I could go back in time and look at decisions she had made, and I could look up dates and look up what they meant in numerology and like what someone who was a really devoted follower of numerology would have done or thought on those days. And I was like, God, you can explain like everything she did based on numerology. So it made me be able to explain things that I couldn't explain, or parts that were totally fictionalized, or like I was trying to figure out how was she feeling or what was she thinking. And I could look and see like, okay, well, on this day, this is what numerology said about, her specific life path or whatever it was. And I would think, well, that's probably what she was thinking, because it would follow that if all these decisions were based on numerology, probably those were too. So it was actually it wasn't something that I really expected. Like I thought it was going to be like this kind of fun aside. And then it ended up like, it's so detailed and so specific that I was like, this is really useful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was crazy, but it was cool. I learned a lot. If anybody needs to know about numerology, let me know. I'm your girl.
Kristy, a call.
You can teach numerology as like a sidebar to your yoga.
Yeah,
class.
like while I'm doing paddleboard yoga, it'd be great.
Hey, Kristy is running a camp for paddleboard yoga and
oh my God,
numerology.
I would totally go to Kristy camp.
Camp Kristy.
I would go to Camp Kristy.
And if you
Rose on the lawn.
If you sign up now, free pink hair dye is included.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
I have a comment, a comment in the chat that I'd like to share.
Okay,
Amber Prater says, I found it interesting that she thought she had hidden who she really was when she gave the veil away, and she thought she stayed hidden. It was sad because she wanted and hoped that she was a new person, but in the end, we found out that Bab's mother actually did know who she was. And it was kind of like, even when no matter how hard you try, you can't really escape who you are.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think even in her real life story, I mean, obviously, like I ended the story in 1934, but of course, like I read everything that I possibly could about her and like what happened to her later in her life. And yeah, I mean, she couldn't hide from who she was. She couldn't run away from her family name. And it didn't matter how far away she got. It didn't matter where she was. Like everyone knew her and, followed her every move until the day she died. And this is kind of interesting. She is buried in an unmarked grave, which I just found so sort of poignant. Like it's like it was like her last attempt for people to just not know her.
Leave her alone.
Yeah.
Anonymity.
But when she left Biltmore in 1934, she never returned. Not ever, not once.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of sad.
It is kind of sad.
Yeah.
Poor Jack.
It's kind of sad.
Well, and back to, the question from earlier, I mean, that's just one of those things. It just goes to show you, like George Vanderbilt built what he thought was going to be, and it has become this lasting legacy and symbol for his family. But for his daughter, it was not the haven and the respite that it was for him. And it was a burden. So, it does go to show you that other people's expectations of what are right for your life, can really make you feel stifled. And anyway.
Wow. So much good information. I can't believe it's 7:49.
I know. I was just thinking that very same thing. I do want to ask a quick question about the Biltmore folks. You did say that they had read the wedding veil before you finished it. Were they involved in other aspects of the research?
Well, I mean, of course, like I worked with a lot of really great guides and things like that to help me along the way, but just the luckiest break. This was another one of those kind of signs that I felt like I was working on this book. I was on tour for Under the Southern Sky, and someone in the audience asked me what I was working on next. I was not talking about this book yet. And I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to say it. Who cares? Like, whatever. And so I told them I was working on a book about Biltmore and about Edith and Cornelia Vanderbilt. And a woman came up to me after and she was like, I work at Biltmore and I'm happy to help you. And, let me know what I can do. And so she helped me a lot. And actually I had written the book at that point, but I was like, one of the things that I've shared in different venues and places, is that there's a lot of conflicting information out there about this family. And so there would be something that I would be writing about, and I would find, 4 or 5 different accounts of the same story. And I'd be like, I don't know what to do. And, everybody, especially with a family like this, everybody kind of has their own agenda and their own story that they're weaving, and including me. I'm trying to tell the most exciting story that I can. So a lot of times I would just pick the one that was the best for my story. But there were things that, as much as I possibly could, I wanted things to be right. And so, when I met her, I said, can I send you the book? Will you read the book for me? And she said, sure. So she read the book for me, and, really helped me a lot. But yes, there were like guides along the way that helped me and that kind of thing. But honestly, because of COVID, like I wasn't even at Biltmore until after this book was already written. So most of the research that I did took place online. And the people that were helping me were namely like librarians and people who, could help me find information virtually, because there wasn't anyone at Biltmore. So, and they don't generally, like, in terms of like their press office, if you're like, I've worked on some nonfiction pieces about the family, and they're like super helpful, Johnny on the spot, send you pictures, send you interviews, whatever. But for something fictional, it's not really like, that's not really their job, So this was more just like a goodwill gesture, for someone just helping me, which was really great. But yeah, they were really helpful. They were really helpful.
Oh, that's awesome.
I got 2 quick questions from the chat. One, was pink hair dye the only thing, or were there other colors too, or was it just pink?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, people dyed their hair blonde and red and black and brown,
so all the hair dye.
Yeah. No, hair dye was like a very, and actually it was funny because the only reason that I know that is because, you could go back and look at the advertising from that time. It's like the greatest thing in the world. But because I could go back in magazines and see like such and such is hair dye, but I never could really figure out. I mean, I'm sure that I could have if I had worked hard enough, but I wasn't sure enough. Like, is it powder and you mixed it, or is it like what was that really like? So
yeah,
I'm not a hair dye expert at this point from 1930, unfortunately.
And then we have a couple of book club members want to know if Cornelia ever saw her sons again and her mother again, or even Jack.
She did see her sons, yes. And they were with her. I mean, there were like different parts in their lives where they were living with her, but it wasn't like she dropped them off at boarding school and never saw them again. And I will have to say, I mean, that was very common. That was not, so I think for us, it's hard to wrap our minds around, but it was extremely common for women of that station in life, or not women, but for children of that station in life to go off to boarding school as small children. And that was like what was best for their development and, whatever. So that was common. But yes, she definitely saw her children. And I'm trying to think, did she see Edith? Yeah, she saw her, just not at Biltmore. And I don't know if she ever saw John Cecil ever again. Like, I don't know the answer to that, honestly. And I have no idea. I mean, he did live at Biltmore until he died. That is true. So, which I think is interesting and actually kind of did give me that sort of like, did he love her forever?
Yeah.
This is kind of, I don't know, take this for what it is, but I thought this was kind of interesting. He had her pets taxidermied when they died. Like, she had lots of pets, and so like as her pets would die, he would have them taxidermied. And I was like, was he like waiting for her to come back? Like, I don't know, there were just all these questions that I was like, maybe he always loved her and was like waiting for her to come home, and I mean, obviously that's the story that I spun, right? But I don't know if that's true or just a figment of my imagination, but there were like little things along the way that I was like, wow, maybe he just always was waiting for her to come home. I don't know.
Wow.
And then obviously, I mean, it's still a privately owned home. So, the boys inherited the house, like another generation has inherited it since then. So, I mean, it did, it does sort of go to show that ultimately all the work that Edith did pay off. And she did many things even after my telling of the story is over, in order to save Biltmore for another generation. So, I do feel like, her work paid off, and I do like that for her.
Definitely.
Oh, that's a good note to kind of wrap up the discussion on, I think, because I cannot believe it, but it's 5 minutes till 8. It always flies by, Kristy.
I know. It's so fast. It's so fast. Well, thank y'all. I feel like I told a lot of stories tonight that I have not told at all, which is like shocking considering the number of events I've done.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I know. You saved it all for us. We get all the scoop.
That was awesome.
Well, we do want to ask you about your latest work, but we do have a few announcements to do for Friends in Fiction in the book club first. So we wanted to ask everyone to be sure to tune in this Wednesday night when Kristy and the other members of the Fab Four welcome Leanne Dolan, author of Lost and Found in Paris, which I'm listening to on audiobook right now. And of course, our May book club event is May 16th, and we're going to be talking with Wiley Cash about When Ghosts Come Home. We're really excited about that.
Love him.
And Lisa, could you tell us about some of our other upcoming activities?
I sure can. If you join us later this week, Brenda and I are the book club besties that will be hosting 2 sessions at the Epigraph Literary Festival. On Thursday night, we're going to host a happy hour where we'll discuss book covers. And our special guests are Mary Kate Andrews, Joy Calloway, and Lonnie Sarum. And we'll be giving away a book during that session. It's Thursday at 8 p.m. And then on Saturday, we have a session where we'll talk about book clubs and online reading challenges. And we have our favorite happy hour guest ever and co-host, Ron Block, joining us, along with Dana Ridenour and Kimberly Brock. So make sure you check the book club page. We have all the links posted. It's free. It's 3 days of authors and literary life chats. It's amazing. So you can log in, get your ticket. And I think registration closes on Wednesday. So if you have to register before the festival starts on Thursday. So as long as you have a free Zoom account, you can attend. It's through Zoom events. So register and come hang out with us. It's going to be a fun time.
So excited for y'all. Y'all are just rock stars taking over the world.
Thanks so much. And now we get to ask you about your upcoming or your latest work. And I think Lisa spotted something.
I do. So you tried to sneak this in on your Instagram last night, ma'am, but nothing gets past this. So let's talk about this. Oh, you can't see it.
I'm going to need a bigger
Kristy has what I'm looking at for those that can't see, it's a first draft of a book titled The Summer of Songbirds by Kristy Woodson Harvey. And the pub date is listed as April 25th, 2023.
It is.
Ma'am, is that true?
I mean,
I'm like, I better go check that date, but
I can't do this on you can't see it, but
that is true. I'm super excited. Yes, it is April 25th. I was like, is it the 25th? It is April 25th, 2023, the Summer of Songbirds. I'm so excited about it. It is a book about 3 best friends who met at summer camp as children. And one of their aunts is the owner of the summer camp, and she is also a protagonist of this book. And after the COVID summer of 2020, the camp is in danger of closing. This is several years later. So this is not like a COVID book, don't worry, but that's kind of the impetus for why the camp might be closing. And these 3 best friends get together and decide that absolutely cannot happen. They're not on their watch. And they decide they're going to get together and save the summer camp. So that's kind of like the broad story. There are lots of fun little, things going on behind the scenes, and lots of good conflicts and exciting things happening. But I'm really excited to share it with everybody.
Love the title. I love the title.
I do too.
It sounds so cool.
I'm so glad. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Kristy, as always,
fiction. Sorry, I'm getting one more scoop. More historical fiction.
One more scoop.
2024.
More historical fiction in 2024. I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Yay.
Yep. So it's going to be great.
Too, after the wedding veil.
I
mean, really.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry,
Kristy,
in the background.
He will.
Oh, that's okay. Again,
we're at a hotel
looks
in
like
Florida.
we kept to this
Anyway, well, thank y'all so much for having me. Y'all are the best. And thanks to all of the book club members out there for being with us. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for taking time for us. We miss you. And
I miss y'all. See you soon. Good night, ladies.
Take care. Bye-bye.